Greetings, salutations, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Devin, and welcome to GML Scriptbox. So, for today's little addition to your script box, we have a little script called clock. Now, what clock is now it's a game timer. It's a game timer. So I'll go ahead and pull it up in the object that's running it. So, all the game timer script really needs is a single variable, and I just have a variable called time. So we're going to go ahead and pass time over to clock, which I have set up in just a little draw text right here. So clock time, which you can see time right there. It's just it adds 1 to time per step. So then you can see how I set it up. So now we'll go ahead and run it. Running the game. Come on. Okay. So as you can see, we have a timer. We have milliseconds right here. We have seconds right here. Right here's minutes. Right here's hours. It will go up to 99 hours. And now note that when it gets up to 60 minutes, it will flip, or 60 seconds, it'll flip back down to 0 and go up 1 minute. If it goes up to 60 minutes, it'll flip back down to 0 and go up to 1 hour. Then hours actually go up to 99 because I didn't bother making it go past hours into days. Because, for all intents and purposes, that's actually beyond the scope of this tutorial. So, what we got here is the script. It accepts 3 parameters. Parameter number 1, as you can see, is the time variable, which you just simply declare it in the create event, and then as long as it's in some sort of step, or some sort of event that's ran every step, like the draw or the step event, it's going to add time per step. If you put in time plus plus or, that actually means, well, actually, it won't work in this case. So in this particular case, if you're using GameMaker 8, time plus equals 1, and then just simply having time right there will mean the exact same thing. So, I'll go ahead and run it right now, and it should run just fine. But I'll run it and show you, just to make sure, because we are very thorough about our stuff, and we want to make sure everything's works. See, works great. So this will work in GameMaker 8. So clock, time, and then we have another field here called measure. You can see it right there. I set the name for it. What measure is, measure sets how high it will display. So right now it's set to 3, which is the max. It will display all the way up to hours. If we set it to 1, however, okay, I'll go ahead and run it. As you can see, it only displays up to seconds. And if you set it to 2, it'll display up to minutes. If you set it to 0, it'll only display the milliseconds. However, because that is set to false, we'll go ahead and run this again. It will go ahead and keep on growing as needed. So it will. It's not clamped essentially, which would be what the final argument is called. It's called clamp. If you set it to true, no matter what, it will stay within the within wherever you set it to for the second parameter. So this clock only counts milliseconds. If we set it to minutes or seconds, it will count up to 60 seconds, then go back down to 0, but it will not tally another minute. So this is useful if you have a timer that will a brain fart. If you have a timer that you don't want to break out of your out of a view box or something, or you have a GUI and you don't want it going all the way across your screen, this is great for that. And if you ever want to limit it, you can always just check the value of clock, and that should do it. It worked pretty well. Now, why not? So now let's go ahead and hop over to the nitty gritty. This is I'm not gonna lie, this is probably one of the most complex scripts I've ever written. There's some pretty crazy things happening here, and under normal circumstances, I would write it out for you. But this has proven to be a very complex script, and I have had to re-record so many times tonight because I keep on screwing it up. So, it's getting late. I need to work tomorrow, so here we go. I'm just going to go ahead and explain to you what's going on. So, here's our arguments. Time, measure, and clamp. And then proc, which stands for process, but we'll get to that. Okay, so This calculates the seconds based on the input value of the room speed. So we have a variable called clock time. Now, obviously, depending on the game, you will set different room speeds. The default GameMaker room speed is 30 frames per second. However, people like to set 60 frames per second. Yeah, I'm actually one of those people. Now, in order to keep an accurate time measure, we need to do this. So we divide the input of time, which is argument 0, we divide it by the room speed, which gives us an accurate number, an accurate basis in order to build our timer on. So then now we have down here an array, which represents each measurement of time. Time measure 0 is milliseconds. I use a function called string delete because we're literally using the decimals of clock time, and GameMaker always outputs 0 point, then blah blah for decimal up to 2 places. We don't want the 0 point in there, so we need to remove the first two values of the string. So this is why we put it in string delete, and then output is string, and then clock time mod 1. Now what mod does is it takes the remainder of of the numbers that you're dividing together. So clock time mod 1, essentially all that does is it keeps, obviously that number, because we're constantly adding to it, is going to keep growing. It's going to keep on adding digits. We don't want to add digits, otherwise it will break our string delete. So clock time mod 1 keeps it in a range from 0 to 99, which works out perfect for us. So then 1, that's the index, then 2, how many to delete? 2, obviously, because we want to delete the 0 and the dot. Now time measure 1, which is seconds. String, because we need to output the whole thing as a string. For, we need a for this particular variable. And then clock time mod 60. So wherever the clock time is, and whatever the remainder is if you divide it by 60. That returns the seconds for whatever number is currently being processed by the script. Then 2, which is minutes. So then clock time div 60. Now we got div and we got mod. Mod returns the remainder, and then div is actually just simply on the other side of the bucket. Div returns the exact number of times a number can be divided into another number without returning decimals. So we got clock time div 60, and then we mod that by 60, which returns our number of minutes. And last but not least, we got hours, which we divide the clock time by 60, and then div 60, and then mod 90. As you can see, this becomes exponentially complex based on how large you get. But mod 99, all that does is set the maximum. So if we were to set this to 24, it would reset every 24 hours. But, for now, just 99. Maybe someday somebody will have a game where they'll want to track time and have it go into weeks, months, and even years. But not today. But you can definitely build it. All you'd have to do is just add time measure 4 and and all that, and figure out how to calculate it. Next, we have a for loop, and I gotta say, this is the most bass-ackwards for loop I've ever written. Because instead of counting up, we actually need to count down in order to make this work properly. So what we have here is for I is equal to array length, 1 dimension time measure. So we're getting the length of that minus 1, because when we're dealing with for loop, we got to put the minus 1 in there. If I is greater than 0, keep running. And then I minus minus, or minus equals 1, if you're using GameMaker 8. Okay, so then this adds 0 to the left when the number is a single digit. So if real, now what real does, real extracts an actual integer or a number from a string. Everything in this array is strings, but we need to do a number check, so we need to use our real function right there. So if real is less than 10, time measure I is equal to 0 plus time measure. Now what that means is, so normally it will return just 0 through 9. But because it's a clock, we need to have a 0 on the left hand. We always want to have 2 digits. So what this little line of code here does in this for loop is it iterates through each and every single one of these. And if it is less than 10, it adds that 0 to the left, so we have 2 digits. Okay, now argument 2 is a Boolean that limits for clamps. So, or actually, that's old. So let me just get that out of there. So then we have, there's process, which is right here, which equals false. So if not process, or if process equals false, we're going to run this code to do some stuff. So if clamp, or if clamp is set to true, is if I is greater than measure, time measure is equal to blank. Now, what that basically means is we're clamping it. So if I is greater than our clamp, then it just quite simply wipes whatever the measure was, or whatever the measure was supposed to be, so it doesn't get displayed. Otherwise, though, we want to check to see if we can add more to the clamp. So if time measure does not, actually it by default it actually shows everything as 0, 0, but we gotta clear out what is 0, 0. So because there's no need to display it if there's just 0, 0 if you don't want it to, at least for the measure variable to work. So if time measure I does not equal 0, or I is equal to measure, that's our check on the measure, then process is equal to true. And basically what that means then, the reason for a process equal to true, it makes so that this code isn't run anymore. But this still will. So we still get the zeros in where we should be. Otherwise, wipe it out. Take that particular measure and just make it nothing. And then all we do is we return our measure, which does exactly what we need to. Now, I'm not going to expect you to go through and copy and write all this down. I am definitely going to throw this in Notepad file, and put this onto a Dropbox or something, or paste it somewhere so that you can just copy and paste it in, because this is a pretty wild little script, but it's very useful. I know I'll be using this a lot in the near future, and I'm very happy to have shared this with you. Well, here we go. That's pretty much it for probably the most convoluted episode of GML Scriptbox. Thank you very much for watching. If I was helpful in any way, show your appreciation by visiting my website or leaving a comment. I love hearing feedback about my stuff. So thank you very much for watching, and happy gaming!